people who call me on the phone constantly. I think that this is starting to turn into a one-sided witch hunt, and I think it's very unfortunate.
All right, further discussion. Let's go to the, excuse me, Mr. Hart.
Name's Lynn Hart, Oak Ridge resident since day one. But I've been following this.
I'm sorry, you gotta give your address.
Sorry, 201 West Southwood Lane, Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Thank you, sir.
Great state of the volunteer state. Anyway, I've been following this whole issue for quite a while, and frankly, folks, from my perspective, individually, I've got $140-something million invested in this community, and I'm all about seeing things go in a positive way. And what I've heard in the last 6, 8, 9, 10 months is nothing but negative stuff that's going to cause people outside of Oak Ridge to look down on us in a downwardly fashion. We get no credit for academics, no credit for athletics, and now we got TV people here viewing this stuff about our police chief, and I think we're wrong about trying to bring up personal things in the past that has to do with his life, and if each one of you up there right now, if I were to investigate your background, what would you have to come back and say? So, by that being said, I'm happy with Chief Akagi. I'm going to cook some Boston Bucks for him here in about a month for the whole police force, because I love what they do. I think I've seen more of a police presence in the last 2 years than I've seen in the last 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Ms. Powers.
Yes, Tracy Stout Powers, 103 Norton Road. This sounds like the same resolution you brought up that was already voted down, the investigating him and pulling up everything you can find online and all that. This has already been voted down by City Council to investigate the chief. It's all like guilty until proven innocent. He's, if it was up to 25 people in this town and say 8 of them outside of this town, if it was up to them, he'd be gone. But the representation for how he's been done by you, the leader of this, like he says, witch hunt, and it's been called witch hunt by
Ms. Powers, let's
but anyway,
stay on point.
it seems like this has already been voted down before,
Thank you.
February 9th.
My name is Myra Mansfield. I live at 103 Hendricks Drive. On the issue of the history of a person's career, I believe that I recently learned that the Oak Ridge Police Department policy requires new hires to prove they have high moral character. How exactly are you going to prove that with new hires if you do not look into their past? And how are you going to substantiate that you need to do that if you won't do that for the leadership of the department? When I say that the TCA 3916-402 prohibits abuse of power, I'm not referring to Chief Akagi. I'm referring to you. You took an oath. You swore to uphold the charter, the state law, and the Constitution of the United States. And when you exclude someone in the department who wants to speak, you are throwing your weight around. And so I want to really adjure you to consider what you are doing tonight. Chief Akagi's past will be coming into this because of the character issue.
Ms. Thomas.
Kristen Thomas, 182 Wayne Lane. I think there's been much concern about what this is going to do to the city, and I'm going to ask you guys to go back and look at what this is really about. And this is about the person that these men and women have to work for. they have to go to work with him every day. People who don't know him, who've never dealt with him, or who have talked to him briefly in his office when he's in a situation that's probably a little bit scary for him, so he's gonna put on his best face. I mean, they can have those opinions, and I respect the opinions that they have. However, I believe I'm the only current officer's wife who speaks, so I feel like I speak for everybody when I say this is not a good work environment. I know because my husband comes home to me after every shift, so I know what he deals with. And while you may think that this is about the city of Oak Ridge, it is not. It's not about your profit. It's not about new companies coming here. And even more so, how bad is it gonna look if he does something else? If he loses his temper again, it's gonna look nasty on the city too. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Scotty, 111 Trinity Drive. I want to know how many families in Oak Ridge have been stopped by these troopers? How come Scarborough is targeted so much by him? Me, my daughter, my wife, and my son. 3 of us have been stopped. Given tickets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ward, that's not the issue that's before us. We'll have to take that particular issue up at another time. I understand your concern, but that's not the issue that's currently before us right now.
Is the question about the Tennessee Highway Patrol,
Yeah.
not about the Oak Ridge Police?
Yes.
It's about him.
Ms. Garland.
Ann Garcia Garland, 120 Outer Drive. I would remind both the council and citizens that a person cannot be cleared without investigation either.
Dr. Ford.
Jim Horton, 106 Carson Lane. We've got a lot of switch points on the floor here, but I do see a pattern developing, and we're talking about criteria. One thing that I would hope here is that I see Ms. Bond making recommendations, and I see them being voted down. I also see the second item that we're supposed to consider a specific proposal when we've never set forth any criteria. One thing I would suggest is that in Mr. Callison's case, or anybody that may be supporting item B here, is that you propose your individual criteria and allow them to be discussed and voted on and establish your criteria before you decide whether to consider a specific proposal. Is it Ms. Bond shouldn't be the one to carry the entire burden of setting the criteria. Is it before any contractor is selected to do this, the council as a body needs to establish detailed criteria. And I realize she still has the floor, but I haven't really seen a lot of initiative for the council as a whole to establish criteria. I hope you'll take time to do that tonight.
All right, the motion before us is to have the investigator review the past history of Chief Akagi. Will go to the board. Motion fails 6-1. Ms. Bond.
I'd like to make a motion that the scope of the investigation include investigating the specific allegations found in the grievances and the letters from all the former employees who have submitted their letters or grievances to the city or the city council since the beginning of January, to include but not limited to Officer Bayless, Mr. Marlowe, Mr. Knoll, Mr. Myers, Mr. Carden, and Mr. Mansfield.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the investigator review I think the specific grievances that have been filed by the departing officers since when?
Since the beginning of January, the allegations found within those grievances and those letters.
January 2015.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, don't you think it would be fair to also require that those particular people also be investigated as far as their past and what may be there? I personally don't, so I don't want to do it to Akagi either.
Mr. Chin?
I'll defer to Ms. Vaughn to answer that question if she's going to do that. I just have a point of order.
Yeah, I do want to answer to that. How do you propose that we ensure accountability within the city if we don't take the necessary steps to investigate allegations on anyone within our city?
Can I answer that?
If Mr. Chin will defer to you, he has a point of order.
I will.
It's my experience as a professional engineer in the engineering business that you don't play engineer. You hire an expert to do just what you say. But for us to sit here and single out individuals for scrutiny without looking at the whole picture is, to me, it's very unfair to the victim of this witch hunt.
To be clear, I didn't specify anyone specific. I said that I would like to make a motion that the investigator investigate the specific allegations found in the grievances and letters of those employees. That I'm not specifying any specific allegation or pointing at any particular finger. I'm asking that this council make sure that the investigator look into these issues that our citizens and our police officers, former police officers, have brought to our attention.
Mr. Chin?
Yeah, just a point of order. Just a point of order. Should we expect qualifications or justifications for the other proposals from Mr. Callison coming forth, or are you just going to let the prosecutor do what the prosecutor sees fit to look at? Or the investigator?
And I don't have a microphone. There was a specific proposal that they provided, so it says exactly what they were going to do. I mean, that's the extent. Meaning, quite frankly, if you've done 50 of these in the entire state of Tennessee, I would like to believe that this is a very professional organization, and having done 50 of these across the state of Tennessee, that they understand what they're doing.
Yeah, I would expect that this, whether or not this is defined in advance as part of the scope of investigation, a good reviewer would, who's looking into morale within the organization and administrative policies, would be cognizant of the grievances that may have been filed and would hear from staff about them and would make some sort of, would include them in their review, whether they, but I don't want to ask them to investigate our grievances. That's part of our city personnel procedure. It's not something that we bring somebody in from outside to do. But they need to be, I would expect that a competent professional would be cognizant of those things and would take them into account as they saw fit. I don't want to tell them what they have to do.
Mr. Callison?
I was going to ask the city manager, what do we do with grievances that we receive from our employees, the police officers, and anybody else in the city?
All employees have a grievance process that's outlined by our personnel department. Those grievances can be coordinated through the HR director, and then that is brought forward to me. Now, that involves employees that are currently employed with the city, past grievances after they've left the city. Those are not part of that process.
Ms. Vaughn?
Ms. Smith, you stated that you assumed that the investigator would look into some of those matters, but as Mr. Watson just pointed out, if they're departed employees and if they filed a letter versus a grievance, or if they filed a grievance after they departed, that would not be something that would necessarily be accessible to them. Furthermore, you voted down the motion to involve departed employees, so I fail to see how the investigator would, how you would assume that the investigator would have access to those letters and grievance files.
My expectation is that an investigator would be getting information from the people they're talking with, and if they identified some concerns that were related to various complaints, they may look further into it if they see reason to do so. I am not privy to some of the letters that you say we have received, so I can't comment on the specifics of those items. But it would seem to me that a competent professional who's looking into morale within the organization would identify indications of problems and would look into those indications further. I don't want to tell them exactly what they have to do. I'm not in that field of work. Thanks.
Ms. Vaughn?
The names that I listed were provided to all of council and were provided to the paper. You're placing a great deal of expectations in someone who has yet to be identified and voted upon without establishing any expectations. I would presume that you would believe that every member in this room and every member that is a leader within our city or any organization is considered professional and capable. That's not what this is about. We need to go about this in a way that instills confidence in the public, instills confidence in the police department that we're doing due diligence. We're not just abdicating our responsibilities.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that from the very beginning, Ms. Bond, this entire thing has been done outside the process. It was sent to the media first before council had a chance to deal with it. It's not fair to single out somebody. Now, you know as well as I do where this is coming from. And so I don't choose to go way back in history here. But as far as I'm concerned, this needs to be done by professionals, not by us. Because there's too much bias, there's been too much press, there's been too much misinformation put out there, there's been too much hearsay, and I don't think it's fair to either side of this issue, the officers on the police force or to Chief Akagi.
Mr. Hensley, it's regrettable that you keep trying to make this personal and keep bringing in your personal affections into the discussion. I seek the same thing in terms of seeking someone professional to be able to do that. And I agree, it's not in our scope. Even though the charter does give us the authority to investigate as a body, I am agreeing to the process and trying to facilitate the process of moving forward with an investigation. Part of that is if we're going to solicit someone to do this work for us, we have to be able to define for them the scope of the work and what it is we're asking for. We're leaving all expectations and all criteria up to whomever we select without giving them any kind of guidance.
Mr. Bailey?
Matt Bailey, 17 Riverside Drive, Oak Ridge. Two brief comments. I'm surprised Mr. Bailiff's name came back up because since Ms. Vaughn and Mr. Mansfield saw the video, this is the first time I've heard of his name being brought up. And I think it's possible that perhaps the way he presented that incident was not in fact exactly the way that it happened. So I'm surprised that name came back up. Secondly, I believe your motion was to interview all the people that wrote the emails. I think everybody here is probably aware that Bobby Drennan is dead. You know, he's the psychic that was in Morristown. I'm wondering who's going to interview the infamous Bobby Hill, the guy that wrote the 2 anonymous emails. I don't know where he comes into all this, but you seem to put an awful lot of faith into a guy that wrote anonymous emails. How are you going to interview that guy?
Just a minute, Mr. Hackett.
My motion was not to interview those people, it was to investigate the allegations found in the grievances and the letters. And there's an understandable reason why we received some anonymous and some not, but I listed off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 brave souls who put their name to their letters.
Yes, sir.
Mike Mahaffey, 113 Fallbridge Street, Oak Ridge. First, I do want the investigation to go forward. I have had friends that work for the police department. Some of them are no longer friends by their choice for some reason. I'm sorry this is tearing our city apart. It needs to be resolved. But I would also want to point out that Mr. Watson, in a response to Ms. Vaughn's email in late February, when she asked 3 questions, he responded. I don't have the email in front of me, but since over the last 4 years under Chief James and Chief Akagi, not one complaint had been brought to the HR department about the Oak Ridge Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Mr. Hart.
Name's Lynn Hart, 201 West Southwood Lane, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I just want to say a couple of things and then I'm gone. Number one is that I'm all about this city and whatever it takes to make us the best that we can be. But however, I feel like in the last several months, because of Miss Bond and all the stuff that she raises to the surface that doesn't appear to have any substance to it, except costing you money, costing me money, costing time. This is a beautiful Friday evening. What are we doing? We're down here talking about trying to, pardon my language, rape somebody over that
You need
issue.
to stay on the motion in front of us, which is the review of the grievances.
Don't think it needs to happen. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Grant.
Ms. Smith and Mr. Good, you do in fact have a copy of one of the grievances because I personally handed it to you at the work session in which we were not allowed to speak. And it states issues such as witnesses to our police chief pulling his gun on unarmed, compliant suspects. Do you not care if this is going on, that we need to deal with it? That's not hearsay. That man swore, that's true. And how there is other issues that are involved in investigating the issues of the grievances. That's what she's asked for. Investigate the issues that are stated in there. This is not going away, and you definitely need to do due diligence. And I stood right here at the February meeting and I looked you in the eyes and I said, I want to know that I can trust you to do what's honorable and not to control and not try to manipulate the outcome.
Anthony Allen, 109 Barefoot Lane. There are some very serious allegations, and this issue is not going to go away. I think it's heartbreaking. I think that people are trying to find out what happened. And the only way to find out is to investigate the serious allegations. You know, we're trying to find some parameters, and everybody just kind of wants to sweep them under the rug. I'm an engineer too, so I know how to investigate and look at things. Sometimes we follow facts, and they may not lead us to a very nice situation, but we should investigate anyway. We should not be reviewing. Reviewing means that things are already done, and you like them as they are. Investigate means that you look at some data, and you allow that data to go where it takes you. And we have some serious allegations that we should follow, and follow where that it takes us.
I'd like to make a point of clarification in response to Ms. Mansfield.
When I said I was not privy to all of those items, I meant I was not privy to the entire list. You did indeed give us that one item, and there are a couple others, but there's a list here of things that not all of us have seen. Thank you.
All right, further discussion. We will go to the board on Ms. Vaughn's motion to include a review of all grievances filed in the police department since January 2015, and letters. Motion fails, 5-2. Ms. Vaughn.
I'd like to make a motion that we require that the investigator selected must be someone with no affiliation or ties to the Oak Ridge Police Department or the City of Oak Ridge.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that the investigator, restate your motion, please, Ms. Vaughn.
That the investigator be someone with no affiliation or ties to the Oak Ridge Police Department or the City of Oak Ridge.
Is there something tricky in that question? I mean, we pay MTAS. Does that make them associated with the
We
city?
don't pay MTAS.
Yeah.
MTAS is state funded. Your statement
Right.
that we pay dues was wrong.
Oh, okay, fine. I'm just asking.
Mr. Callison, you got the floor. Do you have anything else on that?
No, I'm just asking how the association is being defined.
Ms. Smith, did you finish?
That was my question as well.
Okay, Ms. Vaughn.
Well, since you brought up the specific example of MTAS, I would suggest that we question the relationship between MTAS and TML. I'll pass this out now. The entire intent of what we voted on was to make sure that it was independent, that was your word, and that it was unbiased and fair. And because MTAS, if you look at the top of this document, says in cooperation with TML, they are very, very closely tied at the hip. TML provides us with liability insurance. So when people sue us, like the number of officers who've taken us to court in the last 4 years, contrary to what Mr. Mahaffey said, TML defends the city in those cases. So if we choose MTAS to be the investigator, they have a tie to the City of Oak Ridge in multiple ways, including that they provide us various services indirectly through the taxes paid by the taxpayers of this city. Therefore, it would behoove them to come out in favor of the city on anything, lest they be contributing to a possible lawsuit that TML